Welcome to another episode of The Rundown. My name is Aaron, and this is Pastor Daniel Lucas. Excited to get to break down yesterday's message.
Yeah, here we go.
It'll be a lot of fun. So we got two big battles, right?
Two big battles.
It was in the series. People feel like they're good enough to go to heaven. This idea that we are just, that it doesn't matter whatever we do on this side of heaven, we're just trying to create that tally to just make sure that it's got more stuff on the good than the bad, right? It's a big misconception, isn't it?
Absolutely. You know, one of the things I said was like, you know, less and less Americans every year are starting not to believe in God, but they do believe in afterlife. They do believe there's a heaven. In fact, majority of Americans believe there's a heaven, and just about that many believe they're going there.
Yeah. It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're all looking at this idea that, you know, be a good Samaritan, just, you know, I'd call it the secular salvation. Have you heard of that saying, secular salvation?
No.
So like you got somebody that was raised in a poor family, and then you have this success story where you got this killer 401k, you're making $100,000 a year, and then your legacy is that you went from rags to riches. Congratulations, you made it. And then they think, hey, why not? Why wouldn't all the good that I've done that time, Dan?
Surely that qualifies you to go to heaven.
Exactly, right? But I love what you said yesterday. You talked about that all the things that we put on this side, we create our own system. And if we're talking about being good, or we're talking about living out a life that we would call right, it's based on our own merits.
Well, even think about people who attend church. Like if I ask you, said, well, why are you going to heaven? You probably would start and says, well, I believe in God and I go to church, I read my Bible, I tithe, or I serve, or I give, or I help people, I feed the poor. Like you go into what you do as if it's your works that get you there, your merits that gain you there.
Yeah.
So easily you can hear somebody when they start talking, because the moment you say you missed it.
Yeah.
You missed it.
Yeah. You know, to be honest, man, raised in church my whole life. I can relate to Leanne. You call it your Leanne's story very similar to my own. And sometimes you feel like, I don't really have a story to tell. Like you see all these, we showed the Ark, the Bellevue video. I mean, you see these incredible stories and you're like, my story isn't like that. But you talked about this goodness that she has, this incredible story that is still within her, that there's been continual faithfulness all throughout.
Well, if somebody looks at me, they definitely know I need to be saved. Like that guy needs help. No, that. But what about somebody who's good? You know, I think about people all the time. I mean, they're some of the hardest people to reach because, like, man, I'm better like half the people attend your church.
Yes. Yeah.
Like morally, like I mean, you don't know what's going. Like I'm better than they are, so they think this measuring stick, like, hey, I'm better than them, and they go to church. Why don't I need church?
Right.
Why don't I even need to go?
Right, absolutely. And so you talked about this need that we all have, and that's this need for forgiveness. And that is the ultimate line, or you basically see Jesus laid out his system of what it means for somebody to enter into heaven.
Well, if you created your own system, real quick, if you're like, I think I'm good enough, then what's the standard?
Right.
Like, what's the measuring stick? What are you measuring yourself to? Well, if you just think that out, just logically, you've made the standard, right? Because, right, I mean, we all get to go. Like, if it's a curve, okay, was it 70%?
Right.
If you're 51% good and you're 49% bad, you make it. Well, how do you know? And then where's their checkups? Like in your 20s, in your 30s, in your 50s, am I almost there? Like, if you just think about logically, there is no measuring stick to know if you're good enough. So you've made it up. Like, you're going to base your entire eternity on what you have created that's good enough.
Yeah.
And then you got the Bible that says none of us are good enough. Like there's no one righteous. Like everyone's sinned and fallen short.
Right.
So if the Bible if it says we're not good enough, then how do we get there?
Right.
And so that's why I made the statement, good people don't go to heaven, forgiven people go to heaven.
Absolutely.
So it doesn't matter who you are, you could be forgiven. And that's the key. That's the key. And I love that I said about Christianity, it's not about religion, it's about relationship, is that everyone's welcome. Everyone gets in the same way, and everyone can meet the requirement.
That's right.
Like he already tells you, if you want to get an A on the test, here's how you get an A.
Yeah.
And everyone's welcome, and everyone can do this. You just need to believe. Like how simple, but then how narrow, but then how people miss it.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, I appreciate the truth that you gave us, though, yesterday, and even today, getting to break it down a little bit more. I'm going to put you on the spot, though.
Okay.
If you could sum this series up into one sentence, we went through the whole still standing, how would you sum it up?
Still standing in one sentences. Well, I would go with what Paul says. It's always good to go with what Paul says, right? Like all God's promises are yes and amen. Like there you go. Now, if I could sum it up, really at the end of the day, and it may be one sentence. I don't know if I've ever done anything in one sentence. Josh, have I? I don't think so. I don't think I've done anything like in one sentence. But really, at the end of the day, I would hate, because you have conditional promises, you have unconditional. God will never leave me nor forsake me. Unconditional. It's an unconditional promise from God. No matter if I turn my back, He won't turn His back on me. I'll never separate me from His love. Those are unconditional. But the conditional is, if you, I will. Yeah. You know, after doing this whole entire series, I hope people's minds will open up that I would hate to get there and look at what I could have received from His promises because I didn't blank. Yeah. Like I didn't believe, or I didn't trust, or I didn't bless, or I didn't, sorry, Chia, or I didn't give. Yeah. You know, we talk about it, like if you tithe, He says it's if you, I will. Yeah. Like I don't want people to miss what God has for them, because His promises, every one of them are yes, if you will do what He asks you to do. So there's the unconditional that's always there, but it's the if. Yeah. And I don't want anybody in this series to miss the ifs. Yeah. Like, if I do this, then God will. If I forgive, God can forgive you. If you do this, God says, I'll bless you. Yeah. And so that was like 17 sentences. Hey, that was like 8 paragraphs.
That's what we needed, though. Hey, even if you would have said one sentence, you would have broken it down, right?
One sentence, but there's 5 subpoint sentences.
No,
that's the Baptist thing.
Absolutely. That's it, man. So good. Appreciate you. Appreciate the word, especially just being able to break it down, the rundown. But guys, thanks again for joining us for another episode of the Rundown with Pastor Daniel Lucas.